Thanks for tuning in to the HR Uprising podcast. I'm your host, Lucinda. The HR Uprising is focused on helping forward-thinking people professionals deliver real lasting value in their organisations. I'm a chartered psychologist, speaker and trainer, and recently authored the best-selling business book, How to Be a Change Superhero. My day job is founder and CEO of software and training business Actus. This gives me the opportunity to work with other businesses like yours. We are focused on building a better workplace for people wherever they are located, with the help of our performance, learning and talent management software and our training and consultancy services. Every week on the podcast, I will be covering different topics and challenges, joined by relevant experts and real-life people professionals. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoy and get value from this week's episode. Hello and welcome to this week's HR Uprising podcast. And this week we're following on in our Chief People Officer Career Journeys series. And I'm so pleased to have Kate Hughes of 7 Investment Management with me today. So I've known Kate for a few years and I know that she's very much an investor in people as well as 7IM and investment business. But Kate, would you like to just introduce a little bit about your position and obviously 7IM, just so people have the context and the industry that you work within?
Yeah, thanks, Lucinda. Thanks for having me on. So I've been the Chief People Officer at 7IM for the last 10 years now, which is frightening that I've been there 10 years. But we work obviously in financial services, asset management, private wealth, and as a business, we're ever expanding. So when I joined, we were about 170 employees. We're now up to 600 plus within the group.
So that's quite a serious expansion. And so it's not been dull over the last 10 years in terms of what you've done there, I guess. Do you want to give us the headlines in terms of highlights through that journey of the 10 years or sort of things that you've had to do and how maybe your team has developed in terms of people we work with?
Yeah, the team has been crucial actually, right from the very start, because when I joined, as a small company, and a lot of people have experienced that, there aren't always the processes and systems in place. So that was really the first task, was sort of managing that with the team. It was a new team we put together, and one of them still with me. She's now Hannah Yazin, as head of people for private wealth, and Sarah Trow, who was with me from the start. She's only just moved on last year to grow her career. So, you know, together we did sort of build that HR function, systems, processes, and then as the business grew, it mainly became about culture, actually.
That's interesting. So, and what sort of things did you do? So once you'd established your systems and processes and got those in place, typical HR type, maybe more transactional type things that you've got to get sorted. So then that sounds a little bit like you're moving more into strategic HR or OD type stuff, would you say? What sort of things were you doing differently then?
Yeah, definitely. So from about, I would say, 2018, 2019, so 3 to 4 years into my journey, we realized that the culture that we had, that was, you know, that small business where everybody knows everyone, as we started to grow, we needed to put more attention on that. Is what were the aspects of the culture we wanted to retain? What were elements that we knew we needed to progress on? And that sort of tied in with our new CEO, Dean Proctor, starting, and that kind of gave us the license to really focus on that. And we did a whole sort of cultural alignment program with a third party where we spoke to every single colleague and established, you know, what we wanted our values to be, what our common goal was, and those sort of principles that we wanted to live by as we grew.
So because I think talking about actually doing cultural change, that is, you sort of answered some of what I was going to ask there. So you obviously got some external guidance there to talk to everybody. So it was something that was built from within the whole organisation in terms of the aspiration of the culture. So was there anything else? I mean, I suppose, how do you almost, for people listening out there, they're thinking, oh, people talk about culture change, but where do you start? Is that where you say start, by talking to people and values, or any tips there?
Definitely, it was the colleagues, because I think, it's very easy in HR to, you can read the theory, you can listen, you can look at best practice, and you can create something, however wonderful it is, and then try to deliver it in my experience, that doesn't work. You know, with everything we do within 7IM, now the wider group, through trial and error, getting our fingers burnt a few times, we've learned, honestly, just talk to your colleagues, ask them what they want. 90% of the time it's aligned, but there are a few things in there you do need to listen to, and you kind of, oh, okay, that's more important than I realised it was, or actually that's less important, we don't need as much focus. And what we've really benefited from, and certainly going into lockdowns, the timing was marvellous, because we'd kind of really established who we were as we went into that, which meant, you know, through those difficult periods, we really did maintain that and actually continue to grow. Had we not done that work beforehand, I think the company would have been in a very different position.
And when you say you established who you were as a business, so sort of an identity, what did you see that made you know that that was the case? How did you recognise that had happened?
Yeah, it's behaviours really, because what sort of came out of that was the client focus. We are client focused. That's what we do. We manage people's money. It's so important. And the people who work with us genuinely do care about the client. And that really is what came through. Also, what came through was they weren't happy for colleagues whose behaviours didn't support that culture to be there. So it was almost a peer review of, actually, no, that doesn't fit with how we want to work as a team. You know, that person isn't working as a team. So I don't think that's about groupthink. I think it's about how we behave to each other and outwardly, and you just feel it. I know that doesn't sound tangible, Lucinda, but actually if you came into our offices, you would feel that, you would know what I was talking about.
Well, I mean, it is interesting because it is a bit intangible, and that's why it's worth discussing, I suppose, isn't it? So you almost see symbols of stuff when you look back, or you recognise it. So, for example, I know that I worked with you and the team 3 or 4, about, I know, 21, quite a few years ago, and you did things like 360 feedback, and Dean and everybody was really approachable when I did the feedback sessions. You could tell people were very human and kind of open and I'm saying non-hierarchical, but just like not airs and graces. So people all cared. And I think the other thing I noticed in you as well is that you don't just care about the customer, you care about your people. So it's almost like there's a general thing of people care about, if you care about your people and develop, you know, support your people, then they're going to care about the customer, I suppose. So that's maybe what I've seen as an outsider, as examples of where I would recognise the culture is different from some of the other cultures that I work with. It's quite a huge.
I think you're right, and I think the hierarchy is important. So, you know, simple things. We don't have offices as an Exco team. We're very accessible. You know, there aren't different terms and conditions for senior members. You know, things like that are important. I think it's because we are one team, and you know, people shouldn't be treated better or have better things available to them or access to different benefits because they are more senior. You know, we're one team, and we really try and be as transparent as we can. We're honest. We don't get everything right the first time. That's what we're really honest about, is like, let's do this together, give us your feedback, we'll see what works, and you know, we'll move forwards. And we're always moving forwards, I think.
So that kind of intention that you're saying there, that would come through, you'd expect in something like an engagement survey, or that should engender quite high trust. And also you're talking about not having different policies and stuff. Well, that's very much an HR area. So did you consciously decide not to do that, or was it something, you know, it was never there, so you just didn't put it in? Is there anything there where you made conscious decisions from an HR point of view?
No, it was, right from the founders, they very much did view it that way. And then when Dean came in, he also shared that value. And when we've hired new members of our executive team, and the recruitment process really does focus on, you know, their beliefs and their attitudes, because it doesn't marry otherwise. You know, we enjoy having people from all different backgrounds, areas, experience, but there's still that common goal that we are colleagues, is what I would say. We are colleagues, and that's how, you know, that's the fundamental element of it.
So you consciously recruit for value fit?
Yes, 100%. You know, I think what we like is enthusiasm. I don't think you can teach or recreate, and also there has to be that sort of passion for what they do. Certainly for managers and senior staff, there has to be that element of leadership and their beliefs that come out in that. And you know, going through our recruitment process, anyone who's done it, you meet a lot of people along the way. It wouldn't be uncommon to meet, 10 different people en route, because we're always testing those values, but also they need to see us and see if we fit with their values.
Absolutely, it's got to be two-way. And if it's talking about the values, and obviously we'll go on to your earlier career, but it's been very interesting talking about how you work currently. I mean, one of the people you mentioned earlier, Sarah Trowell, actually came on the podcast a few years ago, because I remember asking you if you'd come on the podcast then, and you said I would like her to come on. So I know you're always keen to lift up other people and give people a platform in terms of that. Do you want to talk a bit about how you like to work with your team and what works, I guess, in terms of an HR team, in your opinion?
Yeah, definitely. So the team has grown again. When I started, there was 3 of us, and now I think we're up to 12. So again, it's grown fairly rapidly. But I do believe in sharing information. So that's also personal. That's how I make decisions. That's how I sense check, what I'm feeling and what I think is the right thing to do. But I very much share the knowledge, because I think, how can somebody grow and learn if they don't have access to that information? And also, I think certainly with HR, it's very personal. I very much understand there is an outcome, and we'll all have individual styles, and we get there different ways. And I'm okay with that. I very much believe you should be yourself, because if you're being yourself and true to how you operate, that will automatically come through in your language, in your behaviours, and therefore the outcome you get to, as long as that outcome is sort of agreed on, we know where we want to get to. How you do that, then I'll support you with that and value you for who you are, because it doesn't mean my way is the best way.
Yes, and so allowing everybody to find their own journey in terms of you're knowing what their strengths are and sort of helping people to blossom in those directions. Just leaping about slightly, I was just thinking also the classic thing that people, aspiring CPOs, and you hear if criticisms are levelled at HR, it's about being strategic, or your role in terms of how you fit within an exco. In those sort of things. What's your thoughts in that? Because you've come across it about being very authentic is coming through here, and that's all the way through it, and that is quite a cultural piece anyway. How important, I suppose, the whole thing about being strategic are you saying just about being open, helping people to understand the consequences or why they're doing things? Is that what you do if you're sort of supporting your team, or what's your view in terms of being credible as part of Exco and helping them to be as well?
So ultimately, we work for a business, and having that commercial acumen is so important. And that is what we start with, genuinely. So you have the policies, the practices, the beliefs, but there has to be a commerciality to it. So any decisions we make, right from, the most junior person in our team joining, that's what we talk about. Okay, what's the business outcome here? We teach them, and we talk about the cost. I'm not big on ROI, return on investment, and things like that. Yes, there's a place for that, but actually it's just about having some commercial acumen. If it was your own business, would you make those decisions?
Yeah.
And we very much feed that through. I think then what that does is, when my team are working with their managers, they are credible. They're not there just to represent colleagues, which we are, obviously. We're there, to manage all people strategy, but we are part of the business and we add value. And I think that's why I've always certainly had a seat at the table, why, we're credible within our business, why we're an HR team who sit within the business and are core right from the start of decision making. We've never been in that place where we're told after the event, you need to do this, you need to do that. And that is a wonderful position to be in. I know that isn't the same in all businesses. And, we're very fortunate that we're given that opportunity. We've proven ourselves and we continue to do so.
Yeah, I mean, you've created that as well, haven't you? Absolutely, lived up to it. Brilliant. So thank you for that. I think it's very interesting in its own right. But let's go back a little bit. So, did you always want to be in HR? What was your journey up to the point at which you joined 7IM?
Yeah, I finished university. I did a law degree, and I think, like most people, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew what I didn't want to do. That wasn't to pursue law. I didn't have the confidence or, the contacts, all those things you needed. So I just went temping, actually. I joined I'd always tempt, so I carried on with that. And then I joined Jewson's, the builders merchants, in Coventry, their head office. And very quickly, they gave me a couple of opportunities. They said, look, do you want to go into HR or finance? And I spoke to my dad, and he said, "Not finance, Kate. That's not your bag. Go into HR." And do you know what? I'm really lucky. It doesn't always happen, but I knew from day one, right, I found where I'm meant to be.
So the vocation landed,
yeah. I'm really passionate about it. It wasn't like I grew up thinking I want to do HR, but it played perfectly to my skill set.
Yeah, the sort of the people in the commercial. I had when I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I started out in sales in pharmaceutical, and then I went on a sales training course. I looked at the trainer and went, "Oh, that's what I want to do." So I was thinking learning development is a kind of vocation, and HR, they almost find you, and you know it when you see it. But a lot of the time, the jobs you know when you go to uni or at school, they're not. You don't know they exist. The jobs that
No,
you really need to find.
yeah.
So, and where did you go from Jewson's then? So you started out in HR there.
Yeah, so I think, do you know, like when you've always worked really hard at everything, and this came easy, which was just a novelty to me. And I was like, oh, wow, this isn't, because I am dyslexic. So that explained why, you know, school and university didn't come as easy as, you know, my friends and things like that. So
when did you find out you were dyslexic? Did you find out later?
Yeah, when I was about 18, which made a lot more sense as to why I had to work so hard to get the same results. But that was a relief knowing that, and I'm very open about that at work. I think that's important. And so then to find something that felt like I was naturally good at really motivated me, and I moved very quickly then through my career journey. I was actually quite focused, and so within, you know, I set myself deadlines. You know, I was studying at the time. Then you did your CIPD 2 evenings a week over 3 years, like it was long. But I knew by the time I was 26, I wanted to be an HR manager with my own team, and that's what I achieved. So I moved to Excel Pharmaceutical Distribution. I did that for a couple of years, knew I was ready for the next step. So then I went on to become a senior HR business partner for Alfred McAlpine, and we did facilities management. So I travelled around the country doing, you know, sort of different roles there. And that all just went well. I just kept progressing. And then I started my family. So things sort of, you know, that's when you have to review your career. When I had my daughter, I knew that not only would it be very difficult to go back to sort of a role that was regional with lots of travel, but also I didn't want to, you know, I wanted to be a mum, and I wanted to find a balance. So when she was 9 months old, I decided to set up my own HR consultancy.
Who knew?
Yeah, that's what I did. And actually it worked wonderfully. I mean, I was good contacts along the way, you know, different HR directors. They were happy to recommend me, give me work. And what it meant was I could raise my daughter with sort of a couple of days, mornings a week in nursery. And then I went on to have my son a couple of years later. And I ran that business right up until I joined 7IM in 2014.
Brilliant. I mean, that's interesting. Yeah, so, but actually that doing your independent stuff and then coming, that gives you quite a breadth as well. The great thing is the flexibility too, for you're your own boss. So even though you probably work just as hard, you work when you want to work. So you, and in terms of the children, in terms of the parenting thing, don't you? But that's really interesting in terms of, I think it gives you a breadth, maybe a confidence. Did you think, did it build your confidence? Did you think you had to be confident to do it?
Well, do you know what? I must have been on like a post-baby hormone high or something to have the confidence to do that. I didn't question it, which I don't think I would have that confidence now.
Yeah.
But for me, it was the only way I could be with her more than I wasn't. And I think I probably have always had that innate confidence in my work, not so much in my personal life, but in my work, I am fairly confident. And yes, the breadth of experience that gives you, because you do not have a team to rely on. This is you, and you learn to make decisions. I think having done the law degree was very helpful because I can very quickly familiarise myself with employment law changes, interpretation. I think that did certainly help.
And the logical nature of it, making logical decisions. So it is interesting, I suppose, not thought about that as a balance. So you've got a very sort of human, personable aspect to you, but you've got to be pretty clear in that decision making or the legals and things as well, haven't you? You have that balance.
That's exactly right. And I think I had a range of clients. So from small businesses, entrepreneurs, they need very different support. There's a lot of ego there. You have to be, you know, you have to adjust how you work, but also be quite firm that, you know, I'm doing this to protect you. You've asked me to do this. I'm doing this. to then going in and say, like, Selfridges, I did, I don't know, a couple of days a week there, you know, for maybe 3 to 4 months, just adding to, you know, just where they needed extra resource. I think I did a lot of TUPE work during that time, you know, where people would call you in. I somehow became an expert on that just from doing it. And yes, there's a real confidence that comes because you have to be able to make those decisions.
Yeah. And it's a real variety as well. You're not getting pigeonholed in one area, so you're getting a real breadth of experience that you can bring into another business. So so that kind of completes the journey then in terms of where it's quite a variety of industries. One other thing though, because the industries you were in pre being self-employed and then 7IM, was there anything that you noticed different about being in financial services that stands out relative to the other industries?
Yes, massively different. And I only came in to help 7IM just as a client for a couple of days a week. And then they persuaded me to stay. And I'd never actually wanted to stay anywhere. But the second I walked in, the first day, I was like, actually, this is something I want to be part of. And it is different because you've got the regulator. So, you know, that was something, certainly a learning curve for me, the amount of regulation, which has only increased over the last 10 years. It's enormous. And I hadn't expected to become an expert on governance and, you know, those kind of aspects. Yeah. So there is that side of it. Also, just, I think the money involved, you know, I found that astounding, you know, like just the money people earned and, you know, if someone's leaving a firm because they've done something wrong, they're being paid. It was like, you know, that whole sort of philosophy of how it operated was very, very different. So yes, it did. I did have to go through an adjustment period. Fascinating. And education period as well to make sure I knew what I was talking about.
Whole extra language. It's quite a different. Yeah, there's a sort of, you've got your 7IM culture and you've got your sort of financial services culture as a different piece. So looking back then, in terms of highlights, biggest challenge or challenges that you think you've come along the way that you've learned from that others would learn from?
Yeah, I think the challenges certainly early on in my career was being the only woman in the room. I think that's definitely changing now. And I think my daughter is 17, and when she goes into the workplace, it will be a very different place. And I look back now and I think, gosh, you know, the comments, just the general misogyny that I accepted and didn't challenge, that we just got on with, you know, that was that environment. And it, especially because I was young in the positions I was in.
Yeah.
So it was that credibility factor. I had to work really hard to do that, but I did that without changing my personality. I'm quite a soft person. I'm relatable, I think. I didn't try and become this sort of hard-nosed, you need to take me the way you are. I just carried on being me. And actually, I think that worked well.
You just did a good job.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I'm reliable. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. You never have to worry. I do it when I say I'm going to do it. I communicate. So if something's changing or something's not happening, I do that. I'm happy to have the difficult conversation. You know, I don't shy away from things. I think they're the sort of things that have helped me in my career.
I mean, that's interesting because those are character traits about being pretty courageous, and there's, so although you might describe yourself as quite a soft person, or a kind or gentle and personable person, you're still quite, that's courageous. You're not shying away from the difficult stuff. You're standing up, but you're doing it without becoming a hard-edged person, which is, I think, is quite an interesting one, because sometimes you see some people who really struggle with conflict or something like that, then they almost end up masking, and that's less effective than just like being true to yourself, but being consistent and I think brave, maybe, just to sort of stand up for the right thing.
Yeah, I think I am. For all the things I am, I think I'm a brave person. And I think as well, what I've learned is there is a place for emotion, but you need to know when to use it. Like, it can be very powerful, but there is times when you have to take the emotion out of things. Certainly in the job we do, you know, there has to be a confidence you portray to your colleagues, to your clients, whoever it is. And that's what I say to my team. Anyone working with us should feel like, oh, they've got this. They've got this. Whether we're panicking inside or whatever, they don't need to know that. They need to come to us on these issues and feel like, okay, they've got this.
So that's an interesting one, and also I sort of think the sort of choosing when to put the emotion out and when not. Do you do that consciously? Have you got tips for others as to how you choose, how you learn to be brave or choose to be brave, and how you choose when to put emotion out or not?
Yeah, I think so. I think if something feels and hits you very hard and makes you very emotional, take the break. Do not comment. Give yourself time, walk away. I don't always do it, Lucinda. I'm not always marvelous at it. You know, things can press your buttons, can't they?
Yeah.
But take the time to digest it. Try not to react in the moment. That would be my guidance. Go away, reflect on it, write it, walk away, whatever you need to do. It's not always possible. You know, sometimes when you're in a meeting, particularly say a grievance one or an employee relations one, they can get heated, but use silence. That's what I say to everyone, use silence, take the pause. You don't need to fill it. Take the break, give yourself a moment to recalibrate. And the other thing I would say is any meeting you go into, whether it's an appraisal with your boss, a grievance meeting, a client meeting, a third party, be really clear on the outcomes that you want. I do a lot of preparation. People might not always see that, but beforehand, pretty much anything, I think, what is the outcome I want from this? What will walking away feel like that's good? And what would I be willing to compromise on, depending on the meeting? So do the prep. Don't go into it not prepared. Just give it a thought.
Yeah, having that, because then you know, is it matching up or is it way off in terms of, they say like negotiation, don't they, in terms of knowing what your sort of fallback is, your least worst position. So great, those really good tips as well there. Any particular successes? I think there's lots of successes, but anything particularly that stands out that you'd like to share and again others could learn from?
I think as I grew in confidence, I think it was about sort of challenging the things that were important to me. And I think, I mean, it's easy to say gender, but honestly, as a woman who's grown up in a business, you know, that we have over the last sort of, 20 years in the business environment, I now am much more able and confident to challenge where I think there is inequality. And what you would have seen, certainly when I joined 7IM, I don't know if it was done consciously or not, but women were paid less. They just were. And when Dean came in, we really consciously made an effort to move that and change that and get equality. And if you look at our gender pay gap reports, our established the Gender Equality Network, we've won awards for that.
Yes.
I think it's because I believe in it. And I think, no, I will stand up and say, no, let's just challenge our biases there. Are we doing the right thing here? And I think I am proud of that. I think I have made a difference, certainly in my small world.
Yeah, and also in a very male-dominated industry as well, because I've seen the awards that you and again, Dean's equally proud of those awards. So he's been a real advocate as well, hasn't he?
That makes a difference. That makes it possible, certainly. But I think also it's about recognizing not everybody has the same ability to negotiate, and you will see that with women. They just don't, not always. That's quite a sweeping statement. Sorry. I mean, whether it's on an exit package, on a pay, on a promotion, like we shouldn't just give those things to people who speak loudest or who put themselves forward. It's our job, I think, as a leadership team to make sure we're looking at the whole picture.
Being equitable across the board. Yeah, that's an interesting point, because it's the same thing about people there's gender differences in terms of going for jobs, isn't there? So I imagine that might be similar. Okay, I mean, honestly, I could chat to you for ages, but we won't do that. But if you were just going to summarise, you've already given some really useful tips, hopefully, for people listening, I think. But any other top tips to the younger Kate starting out? Sounds like she did a pretty good job, but any other tips to the wise as to what you would pass down?
Yeah, I think take the time to think about your career. You don't have to know what that outcome looks like. So it doesn't have to be, I'm going to work at this place by this time, but you are responsible for your own goals and objectives. That isn't your manager's job. That isn't somebody else's job. Think about what it is you want to achieve, or where when you think, oh, I've got a bit comfortable now, there is room for more. There is room for more. So try and have a plan, and also ask people for guidance. I think you'd be amazed. People will help. And I know I don't necessarily mean through a formal mentoring thing, but there will be a lot more experienced people who've been there and done that. Just chat to them, just get a little bit of guidance along the way. Most people will happily help you. And even if you don't always agree with the guidance, it does help you then work out what you do want to do. But just take responsibility for your own career. Don't just drift, be a bit more focused on what it is you want to achieve.
Yeah, and you can get there faster, or at least find out what you don't like faster, which means you can get onto the things that you do like faster as well, isn't it? So they say make a decision is a good one. Fantastic. Kate, thank you so much for coming on the HR Uprising podcast. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experiences. I've found it fascinating. I'm sure the listeners will as well. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, Lucinda.
I really hope you found this week's episode useful and enjoyable. If you did, perhaps you could recommend us to a friend or colleague, or give us a review on your platform of choice. It really helps new listeners to find us. Now, you can access links to any of the information mentioned in this show via the website www.hruprising.com. Further free resources are also available at www.actus.co.uk. There you can also find out more about our software and training solutions. Finally, why not join our LinkedIn group, the HR Uprising, to share ideas and collaborate with other like-minded people professionals. Thank you for listening to the HR Uprising podcast.